Good evening, everyone.
Are the mics on?
They're not on. Are these things on?
They're on, yeah.
If everybody could rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act of the State of New Jersey have been satisfied by the inclusion of the date, time, and place of this meeting in the notice of the regular meetings adopted by this board on January 8th, 2024. Such schedule and notice of meetings is posted at the Municipal Building, the Mount Olive Library, the Board of Education offices, and the 6 schools, was submitted to the Daily Record for publication on January 9th, 2024, and was filed with the clerk of the Mount Olive Township on January 9th, 2024. I direct that this announcement be entered into the minutes of this meeting. At this time, I'm going to make a statement of the election. On November 18th, 2024, the Morris County Clerk issued a statement of determination certifying the election of Jennifer Aquino, Anthony Giordano, and Lauren Fitzgerald to the office of member of the Mount Olive Township Board of Education for a term of 3 years, and the election, for the Mount Olive Township Board of Education for 2025. At this time, our board attorney will now administer the oath of office to our newly elected members.
I do one at a time. Can we do all three?
Can we do all three?
Can we do all three?
I don't know how
Why don't we do
Sure.
one at a time?
There you
All
go.
right.
They usually do.
I will, I'm going to.
Thank you.
And if you can read along with me. I state your name.
I, Anthony Giordano,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, Anthony Giordano,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified
and I am not disqualified
as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
nor disqualified due to a conviction of a crime or offense
listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly
impartially, and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Last time I did this, I didn't have something to read off of. This is great. Appreciate it. It's so much easier.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I state your name.
I, Lauren Fitzgerald,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, Lauren Fitzgerald,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified
and that I am not disqualified
as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
listed at NJS 18A:12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Okay. I state your name.
I, Jennifer Aquino,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution, and that I bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments established in the United States
and to the governments established in the United States
and this state
and this state
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people,
So help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name.
I, Jennifer Aquino,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
pursuant to RS 19:4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense
listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
listed in NJS 18A:12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
So help me
so
God.
help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now at this time, I would like to call for nominations for Board President.
I would like to nominate Lisa Narcisse.
I'll second that.
Do we have any other nominations? We have a motion to close.
Motion to close?
Second.
Okay. Lisa Narcisse is our Board President for the 2025 term. Congratulations.
Ms. Sharning, we'll move on to Board Vice President then.
Yes, you will now take nominations for Vice
Do
President.
we have any nominations for for Vice President of the Board?
I nominate Lisa Fenton.
I'll second that. Do we have any others? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close.
I motion to close.
And should we take a roll call, Ms. Sharning, or
All in favor?
all in favor? Thank you.
So, quick question on that. Ms. Young, don't we have to take a roll call of votes to affirm the president and the vice president?
For, yes. My apologies. Okay. It's been a while since I've done this part of the meeting, so
Absolutely.
thank you for
It's been a whole
pointing
year for
that
me.
out.
Happy New
Okay.
Year.
So,
Yes,
yeah,
Happy
we should
New
go
Year.
back to a
So-
roll call on the president.
Item 2.1, this will be a roll call for approval of Mrs. Narcisse, excuse me, as Board President. Mrs. Aquino,
No.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Abstain.
Mr. Giordano,
No.
Mrs. Melendez,
No.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we'll go to item 2.2 for motion of Vice President. Mrs. Aquino,
No.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Abstain?
Mr. Giordano,
No.
Mrs. Melendez,
No.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah, you want me to go on to move
You-
on?
So you've been elected as the board president, so now you will carry on with the meeting.
Oh, thank you. Is anyone else on the board, by the way, not able to log into the board docs?
Me.
I just used my password.
I could try that.
All right, we'll move on to 2.3, NJSBA Representative, Delegate, and Alternate. Do we wish to,
Who was it last year?
it was, I believe, myself, and who was the delegate, the alternate? Do we want to either, one, we can have you all inform me what positions you would like, or two, we can just assign them. What should we do, Mr. Gephardt?
I think, Madam President, if I can for a second, I think on 2.3, and Mr. Gebhardt jumping in, 2.4, it does have to be a board vote,
Yeah,
right? So I think maybe, can we do that next board meeting, Mr. Gebhardt, or do we have to do that tonight?
You could do it at the next board meeting if you want
Just
to.
something to think
People
about.
could give their,
Yeah.
choices on what they would
Maybe
like.
do it at the next board meeting?
That was done last year. at the
last
rear-
year,
it was
we tabled all of the positions and then allowed you to send in your, what you would like, and then we voted on the next meeting.
Love that.
Perfect.
Is everyone on the board in favor of tabling items 2.3, 2.4, 3.1, 3.2? Sorry, I'm going through the
Why don't you
committees.
do a motion to speak on?
So I'll make a motion to table the items of 2.3, 2.4, then 3.1
3.17.
through 3.17.
Second?
Any questions or objections or comments? So we'll take a roll call on that motion.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano.
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
So with that, each board member, if you could, within the next week, please send me a list of committees and representative positions, whether it be to PTAs, as well as NJSBA and the Education Services Coalition as well. Send me a list of your top 3 or 4 that you would like to participate in, and from there, we'll make a list of the top 3, and then we'll vote in the next meeting. With that, we'll move on to motion to go into confidential session.
So moved.
Yeah.
Do we have a second for,
Second? No.
can we take a roll call to go into confidential session?
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
And with that, the board resolves that the board meet in confidential session for the purpose of discussing matters of attorney-client privilege and any others. That's it.
And litigation.
And litigation. And sorry, I missed my apologies, we don't have it all in front of us. Be it further resolved that the matters discussed in confidential session be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists. Action may be taken. We are in confidential session. All right, we are a motion back into open session.
So moved.
All in favor? We're here.
Aye.
All right, I will take 5.1. We will. Yep. Do we want to take a roll call for back into session?
Mrs. Aquino?
Here.
Mrs. Fenton?
Here.
Mrs. Figuera?
Here.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Mrs. Melendez?
Here.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Rosillo?
Here.
With that, we are going to move on to 5.1. I'll take a motion to move 5.1. Ms. Melendez will take a motion. And then our attorney will read it.
I present a motion to approve item 5.1 in the Doctrine of Necessity.
Second?
And we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Aquino?
Oh, do you want to
No,
read it
yeah,
first?
I need to read it in.
Okay. Mr. Geppert will read it
Bear
first.
with me for a minute. Resolution of the Mount Olive Township Board of Education, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, invoking the doctrine of necessity. Whereas the School Ethics Act, NJSA 18A:12-21, was enacted by the New Jersey State Legislature to ensure and preserve public confidence in school board members and school administrators and to provide specific ethical standards to guide their conduct. And whereas questions arose regarding how a board should invoke the doctrine of necessity when a quorum of a Board of Education has conflicts of interest on a matter required to be voted upon. And whereas the School Ethics Commission provided guidance in Public Advisory Opinion A0398, April 1st, 1998. And whereas the opinion set forth that when it is necessary for a board to invoke the doctrine of necessity, the board should state publicly that it is doing so, the reason that such action is necessary, and the specific nature of the conflicts of interest. And whereas the School Ethics Commission by resolution dated June 25th, 2018, clarified and required a Board of Education invoking the doctrine of necessity to adopt a resolution setting forth that they are invoking the doctrine, the reason for doing so, and the specific nature of the conflicts of interest. Whereas the School Ethics Commission further directed boards of education that invoke the doctrine to read the resolution at a regularly scheduled public meeting, post it where post public notices for 30 days, and provide the commission with a copy. And whereas the Mount Olive Township Board of Education desires to consider a proposed settlement agreement regarding litigation with former Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Robert Zawicki, and whereas on January 6, 2025, Dr. Anthony Giordano filed a request for an advisory opinion in this litigation with the School Ethics Commission regarding alleged conflicts of current board members, whereas Dr. Giordano, who was recently re-elected to the board, has been named as an individual defendant in this litigation for alleged actions separate and apart from his capacity as a former school board member. And whereas board member Jennifer Aquino has been named as an individual defendant in this litigation, whereas board member Lisa Narcisse filed a pro se petition of appeal regarding Dr. Zawicki, and whereas board member Lisa Fenton filed a pro se petition of appeal regarding Dr. Zawicki, whereas board member Jeannie O'Neill had 2 children employed in the district during Dr. Zawicki's employment, and as one child who remains a district employee, served as president of a parents' advisory group, and as alleged in Dr. Giordano's request for an advisory opinion, had discussions and consulted with Dr. Zawicki. And whereas board member Luisa Melendez is named as a defendant in the litigation filed by Dr. Zawicki, and whereas the inability of the above 6 board members to participate in this process due to the alleged conflicts of interest results in the lack of a quorum, and whereas in order to discuss and vote on the proposed settlement agreement, the board must have a quorum, and whereas the board desires to invoke the doctrine of necessity in accordance with the procedures established by the commission to consider the proposed settlement agreement and related matters. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mount Olive Township Board of Education, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. 1, that the 6 board members, by nature of the alleged actions stated above with respect to Dr. Zawicki, may have personal conflicts of interest due to employment of relatives in the district, and/or conflicts of interest due to their alleged actions in this litigation. And the board therefore invokes the doctrine of necessity to consider and act upon the settlement agreement and related matters. 2, that this resolution shall be read at the public meeting of January 6, 2025, shall be posted where the board posts public notices for 30 days. 3, that a copy of this resolution shall be forwarded to the School Ethics Commission by the board secretary.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? No, seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Aquino,
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton,
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Giordano,
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez,
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to Board Attorney Annual Ethics Review. Mr. Gephardt, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could, what I'd like to do is just stay here, if possible, for the sake of speed and efficiency. And this is your annual review of the Code of Ethics. We are going to take about 10 minutes to do this. If maybe you'd be able to help me with the pages as I go, I'm going to go pretty quickly, unless somebody wants me to use a clicker. But basically, I provided you with 50 pages of information. We're only going to talk about 10 of them tonight, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through it. I am available at any time to speak about ethics and the issues that happen. We always could have a follow-up later in the year if we want to discuss the other points, because in addition to the Code of Ethics, there's the prohibitions on conflicts of interest that are important too, and you can read them at your leisure. Thank you very much. And, okay, what I do want to do here just at the beginning, I want everybody to be aware, excuse me, let me just take some water here. Aware that there is an ethics commission in Trenton and that anyone can file a complaint against a board member. So I want to start with that. On page 4, I want to mention that the commission does have power. They can grant reprimands, censures, suspensions, or removal from the board. So all those things are serious matters. Oops. Okay, here, one statute I do want to point out, 12-2, no member of the board can have an interest in a contract with or claim against the board. Very important. That's a separate matter. And then I do want to start here with subsection A. The first one is I will uphold and enforce, this is page 7. I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. I do have a case here, Holston, that I cite, where the board member was found to violate this section. She voted in favor of a resolution to send district students to a former receiving district despite the fact the commissioner had severed the relationship and had made 2 directives from the Department of Education. So this one is, do not violate the laws, and it's important. The next one on the next page, B, this states, I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. Now, there are very few cases on this. The D'Amico case was found not to violate it because it dealt with information that actually was different from Section B. Now, the next page, C, deals with the statement, I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. Let me get this to page 9. So that's a statement. In this particular case that reflects it, a DARE program officer was found to have violated this if he stayed on the board because he had matters involving juveniles. They found that that was too much involving. So moving to page 10, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. So this is very important because it draws the line. The Board of Education is the court of last resort. You're the court of appeal here. The idea is you're supposed to give the administration an opportunity to administer the district. Then you evaluate the administration and move forward from there. In this case in Delbury, a board member got in trouble when he bypassed the superintendent and demanded information directly from a district supervisor. That board member was censured. So now on page 11, we have subsection E. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. So right here, I think the key phrases for people to see is not taking private action or making personal promises that may compromise the board. This is the compromise the board theory. This is very important. This is one of the bigger areas in the Code of Ethics that can be a concern. It's part of the reason why the board, we like to have them work as a unit. Everyone obviously always retains their right to vote no on something. The idea is to protect the board and have the board operate in the community's best interest. In this Chang case, we had a situation, the board member got in trouble when they unilaterally issued a rice notice to the business administrator without notice to the board or the superintendent's recommendation. You can't do that. So page 12, and I'm sorry if I'm going fast, but busy meeting. If you want me to slow down, let me know. But page 12, number F, I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. So the phrases here that jump out to me is using schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. That's a prohibition, and this kind of ties into the other statutory section about conflicts of interest. In this particular Elmwood case, they did find that the board member did not violate this provision when they wrote an article in support of candidates for the Board of Ed. The commission found it was not violated because it was written as a private citizen, not a member of the board. They did have a disclaimer, and they found that there were no facts alleged showing they surrendered their independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups. I do want to put a footnote here. There are more recent School Ethics Commission decisions in the area of writing letters to the editor, posting on social media, doing things like that. I have that material in the background. That is an area where board members can get in trouble because it's been found, even if you give the disclaimer that it's my own personal opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, if you get into enough detail and facts about board business that would lead the average person out there to think that you're speaking on behalf of the board, people have gotten censured for that. So I do want to just give you that concern there. On page 13, this is number G, and this states the confidentiality provision. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which if disclosed would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I will provide accurate information and in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its school. So two buzzwords here, confidential, and in all other matters, accurate information. This Flaris case, a board member got in trouble here for violating it. He was at the dinner table, had an email about a student matter involving what a student did and the discipline, talked to his family members at the dinner table about it and actually sent them the email. The son sitting at the table immediately sent it out to all his friends, which spread like wildfire, and very soon everybody in the community knew about this information. So a very simple thing can turn very nasty very quickly. So this is why we want to be confidential. This, of course, is relevant with all closed session matters. Everything we do in closed session is to be kept confidential until we act on it in public. So the next item here is the last one we're going to actually discuss today on page 14, number H. I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available. Well, actually, we're going to discuss a couple others. Qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. So the important thing here, you always have the right to vote no or to ask for additional information, but you only vote after the superintendent recommends the position. The board can't just walk in and say, we want to hire Jack Smith and have a vote on itself. You have to have the superintendent's recommendation. And the case here shows that you always have the right to ask for more information, but it can't be nefarious. So, page 15 has number I, and this is I will support and protect school personnel and proper performance of their duties. This is very important. As board members with the community here, you're just supposed to support and back up your administrators and your teachers and your workers along those lines. In the case here, the board president was found not to be, comments about the board president didn't violate this specific section because of a technicality that the president is not an employee of the district. And then now we've gotten to the last one.
Bless you.
I was just checking earlier to see if people were listening, so we'll see from there. And on page 16, J, I will refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution. So once again, this is the chain of command provision here, that as board members, you hear from the public, you don't just automatically rush to the dais and make the first determination or decision here. The idea is to refer all complaints to the superintendent, let the administration deal with it first at the lowest levels. It works its way up to you. You have the final word, and you're supposed to do it only after it isn't worked out at the administrative solution. The case I show you here was a board member who sent a series of emails to the superintendent, coach, board president, board council expressing displeasure with football players kneeling during a football game. They got in trouble for doing this because he conducted an investigation before ever telling the administration or doing anything. So with that said, that's everything that we deal with in the Code of Ethics. So I point out there's much more material you can read at your leisure. I'll be glad to answer at any time, and we can always discuss it at a future meeting, but this would satisfy you, what you need to do on an annual basis for discussing the Code of Ethics. Okay, if I can turn it back to you. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I do have a question. Will this presentation be posted on the board docs publicly for anyone who's
They
interested?
can if you'd like to, sure.
I have it, yeah. Okay. I think maybe some of the public may be interested in it.
Okay.
All right. With that, we are going to open the floor up to public comments on action items. Members of the community may comment on any action item included in tonight's agenda prior to board discussion. Please come to the mic. You can state your name and your address for the record. And the mic is open for anyone who would like to comment on action items and action items only.
Martin Wellsmuller, 25 Woodcrest Avenue, Bud Lake, New Jersey. I want to say congratulations to Lisa and Lisa on becoming president and vice president, and that's it.
Good evening. I would like to comment on action item number 12.1 on this evening's agenda. As you know, I was the board secretary for the Mount Olive School District for 32 years. During that time, there has never been a legal settlement that was supplemented by taxpayer dollars. The normal course is that the plaintiff's attorney and the board's insurance counsel engage in negotiations with each other until a settlement is reached.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to state for the record, and you can continue, that this matter deals with pending litigation, confidential matters, so the board will be restricted in what they can say. And I always tell members of the public to be concerned that they always could be subject to defamation actions by any individuals. So with that said, you may continue.
Okay. The board then approves the settlement, the insurance company pays it out, and the board merely pays its required deductible of $10,000. In this particular case, the board is adding $152,000 taxpayer dollars to the amount the insurance company is willing to pay. This sets a terrible precedent for future litigation. The tenure charges that were filed against the former superintendent contained 3 charges. The first charge alleged that Dr. Zawicki attempted to extort a donation from one of the board's professionals while suggesting that he could recoup his donation by inflating his billings to the district.
Okay, and once again, I would just caution the speaker not to read from tenure charges or things of that sort,
These
because,
tenure charges are a matter of public record.
but they're outside of a court proceeding, and individuals could be subject to any kind of action as a result of that, so I feel an obligation just to share that with people.
The second charge alleged that Dr. Zawicki engaged in a regular pattern of double-dipping while on district time. The third charge alleged verbal and mental abuse of a subordinate, which was corroborated by the board's own investigator. That's all in the tenure charges, which are a matter of public record. So why would the board be willing to supplement the insurance company's payout with $152,000 taxpayer dollars after the former superintendent attempted to defraud the taxpayers, engaged in theft of both time and money through double dipping, and put the district at risk of a lawsuit for his abuse of a subordinate? Just makes no sense. The board is supposed to act as a steward of taxpayer funds. It is one of the board's primary responsibilities in its fiduciary relationship with the taxpayers of Mount Olive. Paying $152,000 taxpayer dollars to supplement an insurance settlement abdicates this responsibility and goes against the board's pledge for honesty, integrity, and transparency. Additionally, the $152,000 is not included in the district's budget. It would be good of you to explain what programs and services you plan to take money from to fund this payment. For these reasons, I respectfully request that you reject action item number 12.1. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Name for the record?
Martin Wellsmo, 25 Woodcrest Avenue, Bud Lake, New Jersey. Just for the record, those tenure charges were never ratified by the state or anyone else, and therefore they expired worthless. So therefore, that's the facts.
Christopher Zier, 29 Saunders Lane, Hackstown, New Jersey. Just a matter of record, when someone resigns shortly after tenure charges have been filed, tenure charges then go away. The superintendent sends a letter to the school, to the commission to have them reviewed, and from what I understand, that's still in process. The other thing is he was on social media saying that a federal mediator was involved, like saying that this was actually brought up to the federal case. This unfactual information has got to stop.
If we could, no comments amongst the public, please. We're going to continue with the board business.
Karen Fumara, 133 Flanders Drakestown Road. I would also like to address action item 12.1. Take all of the legal stuff off. The fact is everything that's in the New Jersey court's dock for that claim were dates that were after Moassa came to the meetings and spoke publicly about things. So in my opinion, as a taxpayer, this seems very retaliatory. And as a taxpayer, I understand the obligation to abide by whatever your attorney tells you have to do insurance-wise. But as a taxpayer, I will be furious if a penny of my money is spent to add to that. Don't ask me for money to pay for a computer insurance. Don't ask me for money to put a roof on a building. Don't ask me for anything after that, because it will be absolutely infuriating. It's an insult to our children and to our staff to take money out of their budget to add this. It's disgusting. Thank you.
Anyone else? The mic is open. Action items.
Good evening, Kevin Stansberry, President of the Mount Olive Administrators and Supervisors Association, member of that association in good standing for 28-plus years. So I guess I'm referring to a number of agenda items, but yes, Happy New Year. And it's not what the new year brings to you, it's what you bring to the new year.
Anyone else? Oh, seeing no other comments, we will close public comments, and we will move on. We will move to reorganization action items 8.1 through 8.17. And Ms. Fitzgerald, can I have a motion for that?
Yep, I'd like to make a motion to approve action items 8.1 through 8.17.
Second?
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Nope, seeing none, we'll take a roll call, please, Ms. Schoening?
Mrs. Aquino?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
And we will move to approval of the minutes, 9.1 through 9.2. And Ms. Fenton, can I have a motion?
Under the recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes 9.1 to 9.2.
Second?
Do we have any comments or questions from the board? Nope, seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Aquino?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Abstain on 9.1 and 9.2?
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to approval of the monthly expenditures and reports. And Ms. Aquino, I'll take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve action items 10.1 through 10.4.
Second?
Any questions or comments from the board? Nope, okay, seeing none, we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Aquino?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes on everything, but I abstain from 10.4.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
We're good? All right, we'll move on to the next one. I'll take a motion to recess into confidential session.
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second.
And resolved that the board meet in confidential session for the purpose of discussing matters of attorney-client privilege and confidential pupil matters. Be it further resolved that the matters discussed in confidential session will be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists. Action may be taken. Ms. Schoening will take a roll call on that.
Mrs. Aquino?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Mrs. Melendez?
Yes.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
All right, we are now in confidential session.
Ms. Schoening.
Come back into session. Ms. Schoening, we'll take a roll call, please.
Mrs. Aquino?
Here.
Mrs. Fenton?
Here.
Mrs. Figuera?
Here.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Mrs. Melendez?
Here.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Here.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Orzillo?
Here.
All right, we are back. We are moving on to administrative action items, 12.1 and 12.2. Can I have a motion to move the items? Ms. Figueroa, I'll put you on the spot there.
Upon recommendation of the superintendent, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 12.1 to 12.2.
Second?
Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a roll call, please, Ms. Schoening?
Mrs. Aquino?
No on 12.1, yes on 12.2.
Mrs. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Figuera?
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald?
No on 12.1, yes on 12.2.
Mr. Giordano?
No on 12.1, yes on 12.2.
Mrs. Melendez?
No on 12.1 and yes in 12.2.
Mrs. Narcisse?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Orzillo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And we will open the floor up for public comments. Students, parents, employees, and community members may comment on any item of interest pertaining to the Mount Olive School District. Please state your name for the record and keep all comments appropriate.
Christopher Zier, 29 Sojourners Lane, Hackettstown, New Jersey. I'm really not a speaker, I'm more of a writer. I have to say I'm disappointed in 12.1. Of course, I have more information than the community has, so I have a better understanding. But, you know, we can kind of move on in 2025, and we're just big pile of garbage is now gone, and we can kind of move on. My question is, in 2025, Mrs. Narcisse, as you've been reelected to the presidency, when a board member sends a picture of a monitor with proprietary information to someone that's actually suing the district, what kind of investigations would you do in the future? Because from what I understand, and I've been told outside of confidential session, outside of any kind of legal standing, I was told that a board member took a picture of a monitor with proprietary information, sent that to Dr. Zawicki to help his cause, and that, unfortunately, probably that board member voted tonight. Want to know what your action is, because previously in March, you filed a pro se motion to have the state come in and take over the board because you felt that the 8 votes that you voted yes for was incorrect. Yet when a board member does something like that, nothing happens. So just moving forward, what would the policy, or maybe put a policy together to address that?
Well, I can say that the board does have a policy that if a member of the public has a complaint, they can send it in and the board can look into the matter.
I did send an email to you and you decided not to respond. I said it to actually everybody.
Well, I would send it into the board then.
Again?
Yes, and we'll look into the matter at that point. As you know, the board is bound by confidentiality on litigation that has occurred. There are a number of confidential matters that have occurred before and may impact on a response. But if you want to make another request, you can, and the board will look at it under the policy.
That would be phenomenal. Thank you so much. All I ask is for honesty, integrity, as we partner that together, right? And physical responsibility. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right, seeing no other public comments, we will move on to board comments, and we will start simply at the end. Dr. Giordano.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to thank the voters of Mount Olive for the opportunity once again to serve them. Looking forward to continuing our effort to move the district forward. I will leave this. I just have a couple questions for Dr. Banjian. I surely don't need the answers tonight, just something from you, Ms. Showing, that I wanted to reach out to you over break, but with everything that was going on, I was not able to. I had it written down, and now I lost it. And I'm going to find it. Oh, yes, one is involving the special ed audit. Are we going to have a public presentation on that, on the findings? Can we get a date on that? Or more importantly, when the committees are chosen, Madam President, can we remand that back to the curriculum committee to have that discussion and make a recommendation to the full board? Because I think that's something important. Obviously, there's a lot of legality with it. I'm not asking for the full report of what the board heard in closed session, because it was heard in closed session. But I do think it's, the taxpayers paid for that. And we can do an umbrella just to say the hot spots we saw, plan you're working on with your admin team to facilitate any recommendations that came out of that. So that's all I have for tonight, and I appreciate that.
No.
You don't have to respond to it. I'm just,
Okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
putting it out there. Just,
Dr. Bangia will assist you
just a comment.
in an update on that.
Yeah, just a comment.
Anyone else? And we'll move on. Ms. Fitzgerald?
Yeah, just to say again, thank you so much to the public for voting. I know you had a lot of great options this year. No, but for real, I'm very excited about doing 3 more years of this. So thank you all very much.
And Ms. Melendez?
Well, welcome back to the members that were elected and to Dr. Giordano. Also, I would like to congratulations to the all Hispanic community and those who celebrate the Happy Three Kings Day, which is today. I celebrated with my family, certainly this morning. And I know a lot of families here in Mount Olive also celebrate that, which is also known as the Epiphany also. So a lot of Catholics also celebrate that celebration. Thank you for the public comments. Are very enlightened, always very welcome, and very nice to see Mr. Estrilaci sitting here, and Lynn Jones earlier. Yes, it is nice to have coming back people with knowledge and wisdom, and that certainly care about this community. Also, Dr. Gales and Mr. Chris Sayer. And everyone, the CPAC, I see the CPAC president in the back also. So thank you so much for coming.
Ms. Aquino?
I just wanted to say thank you to the public for their vote of confidence in voting this new board in. Thank you.
And Ms. Fenton, we'll keep going.
Louisa, it's also called Little Christmas for us Ukrainian people. So that is today. But I just wanted to welcome the 3 of you on the board, and I wish us a very prosperous year working together.
And I'll swing it over to Mr. Rosillo
I have no comment, thanks.
and Ms. Figueroa.
I don't have any personal comments. I do, however, have something that I wanted to share on behalf of the Flanders PTA. They couldn't have a representative here this evening, but they just wanted me to mention a few quick things. They donated supplies and carts for indoor recess for the school. They also have a character development assembly coming up on January 22nd, the Be Great Show. Teacher grant applications will start at the end of the month, and they want to thank all of the volunteers and all of their crafters for an amazing holiday boutique last month. That's all.
And Mrs. O'Neill?
Congratulations to the new appointed board members, and Happy New Year.
And do we have anything from Dr. Banjo?
Reiterate to welcome the members back who were elected recently. Looking forward to working with you again.
And I'll close it out and saying welcome back. And I think this board looks forward to 2025 of getting a lot of things accomplished. And thank you to the community for your trust in us. And that's all I have. Thank you. And I'll take a motion then to close out the meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.